So I'm going to explain a little bit more about biodecoding, and if you haven't watched it already, you might want to watch the other video I did, the short introduction, because I'll kind of lead off from there. And I want to just go more into explaining this biological solution and what this biological meaning is of the way that our bodies are expressing. And if we look at the evolution of life on Earth, we go right back to the very beginning, which is when there was just a single cell organism. And this is also related to different tissue layers that are in our body as we grow embryologically. So slowly we're differentiating from like the different tissue layers, and then from each of those tissue layers, they're differentiating into like the different organs within our body, the different systems. So this very primal stage of evolution is our most primal part of our brain, of the tissue layer in our body, which is the endoderm. And if we go back to the single cell organism, it was just a sort of ring form shape with an opening at one end that was taking in nutrients, and an opening at the other end which was eliminating waste. And everything for this organism was around survival, was taking in nutrients, it was eliminating, and it was reproduction. And so at this kind of core level of this primal level, also within our tissues, within our cells that are coming, and the parts of our body that are forming from this endoderm layer, which is connected to the brain stem, are all to do with survival. So the conflicts that we experience on this tissue layer and these organs, and it's not even just that it's one organ, because within an organ there can be different tissue layers, but it's to do with conflicts that are called morsel conflicts, so what we need to survive. And so that's related to lots of all our digestive system, parts of our lungs, we need the air morsel to survive, parts of our reproductive system, because this part of evolution and our biological history is about reproduction and the perpetuation of the species, and then eliminating what's not necessary for our survival. Then as this organism moved, also these organisms living in water, as this organism moved evolutionarily onto land, as life on Earth moved from water onto the land, we see this next phase which called for protection. So now suddenly there is this distinction between a boundary between what is me and what is like another surface that I'm coming in contact with, and other organisms that I'm coming in contact with. So this second stage of evolution is related to the old mesoderm tissue layer within our body, and it's to do with protection. So the conflicts connected to this tissue layer are mostly to do with attack conflicts, feeling a threat. And the parts of our body, it's the envelopes. There's like protective envelopes on different organs, like the heart, for example, and within the lungs. So we are at this level of evolution and biology where it's about protecting ourselves. And then we move on to the third stage of evolution, which is when we were mobile and we needed to be able to get food for ourselves. So it's all about our capacity to move. And the conflicts at this stage are around self-devaluation, like our own capability, our own like feeling of powerlessness or capability and our power to achieve and to get the things that we need to survive. And this is the old mesodermic layer, the new mesodermic layer, which is the third stage. And the way this relates to the body is mostly to do with our bones, our muscles, our connective tissue. So it's the part of us that's helping us be mobile, to be active, and our sense of power and capability. And then we move to the fourth stage of evolution, which is relational and social. So we become creatures that interact, that start to form relational hierarchies and structures and dynamics. And so the conflicts at this layer are more complex, and this is to do with the cerebral cortex in our brain, and the tissue layer is the ectoderm. And these conflicts are, like I said, relational conflicts, also separation conflicts, territorial conflicts, things around, what's, also identity, like who we are. It's sort of this stage where we're like communicating and knowing ourselves in this more like way of actual and identity, sort of stepping, I guess, out of just more pure biology. So that's a brief kind of overview of where these biological programs actually come from. So from our contemporary perspective of ourselves as a human being, it doesn't necessarily make kind of cognitive logical sense that our skin might be adapting in the way of forming acne, which is actually the skin building up little shields because we're feeling attacked in our image. That doesn't necessarily mean, oh, that's actually going to make us survive because we got pimples. But if we look back at this evolutionary perspective, we see, oh, this is the layer of our body that's responding for this reason, because when we were a vulnerable little creature coming out of the water, building up some kind of like extra layer of cells on that layer of the skin was protective and a solution to ensuring our survival. So I wanted to explain one more aspect of this, and when we're experiencing symptoms in our body, and how this relates to a triggering events that happen, and then also there is always a programming event that happens. So quite often we'll experience something could even be in utero, in our early years as children, but at any point in our life we can experience a new conflict shock, a bioshock. But because obviously when we're young and also very relationally dependent on the caregivers around us, we're sort of more prone and more vulnerable to having something become a bioshock in these early phases of our life. And when we experience something for the first time, that particular negative emotion, that particular kind of experience, that particular conflict that is connected to these programs in the brain, it's sort of, we don't experience symptoms in this moment unless it was something very intense, extreme. Then sometimes both can occur at once. But usually what happens is the first time we experience the conflict, it's the programming event. And that just sets it up in our system to say, okay, this can happen. Like, this is now a possibility for us in our life. This is a potential risk or a threat to our survival. So that part of the brain kind of gets, I don't know, like activated, I guess you could say, or sort of, turned on, switched on, but not to the point where actually then it runs the full program and we experience the physiological expression of that. But what is going to happen, and I guess there's always a chance that then it never gets triggered again and that's it for the rest of our life, but I think mostly, nearly always, what's going to happen then is we're going to experience different events after that initial one that are going to trigger again this biofeeling, this emotional conflict, this same feeling and within ourselves. And that's when the program's actually going to be activated to run, I guess you could say, in our body. That's when there'll be tissue adaptation. We're going to have an impact on the brain, on the psyche, the level of the psyche, and also the level of the tissues of the organism of the body. And there's two phases to disease, as we could call it. And the first phase is once this program gets triggered, we go into conflict activity. And this is when the tissue adaptation is happening. And quite often there can be symptoms at this time, there cannot be symptoms. It's in German New Medicine, it's much more sort of black and white about the conflict active phase, and then the second phase, which is the repair phase, and in which phase you'll experience symptoms. And so on. From the biodecoding perspective, it's not so cut and dry. We can be experiencing the symptoms and we're still in conflict activity. And then once the body does find a resolution to the problem, we will shift into repair. And so the conflict active phase is the phase of sympathetic atonia, so the body is activated in a more stressed state. And in the repair phase, we're going into bagatonia, so the body's healing, the body's repairing. And that's when symptoms can either appear or even get stronger, or, you know, we actually are in this final stage, but sometimes physiologically we can experience still things that are quite uncomfortable within our body. The shift, though, that will kind of indicate that we have switched into the repair phase are different symptoms of bagatonia. I mean, we can feel really tired, so we really need to rest during this phase. And also on the level of the psyche, things will resolve. So the expression of that in the conflict activity is usually things like ruminating thoughts, kind of compulsive thoughts that's sort of happening on this psychological level, where, you know, waking up in the middle of the night is a very common indication that we have an active conflict, because our brain is trying to find a solution, and so it's waking us up to have more hours in the day, to have more time to solve our problem. And once we have found the resolution, then we will feel calmer, we'll feel more at peace, even though physically there could still be uncomfortable things happening. So that's something to really be aware of and sort of feel within yourself, how you might be in conflict activity, if you're feeling more like tired and drained, but actually like internally and mentally not agitated and not activated, then it's really the time to help your body repair and to really fully let it go into the rest and repair phase at that point. So when we come to do a session together, you could be in either phase, and I can just ask some questions to understand better, like where you might be. And another important aspect of this, which I've already gone into in another video, so maybe just go watch that full video to understand it better, because to me this is a very, very important and revelatory and revolutionary aspect of this whole thing, which is when the symptom becomes self-triggering. So we find ourselves in a self-triggering conflict, and I think this is happening a lot of the time. So if we're experiencing something recurrently, whether that's continuously as like a chronic, disease or symptom, or just periodically, there could be breaks in between, but it's something that comes back again and again, is that we're really, when it's coming back again and there's gaps in between, there's triggers there. So something's triggering us. It's like called a track, which is just something that's reactivating us back into this conflict active phase. So that could be an external thing. That's one option, that there's external triggers. And then there can also be internal triggers, which is our own like mental, emotional response to the expression within our body, to the symptom itself. And when we experience the symptom, we reactivate the conflict, and it keeps us in this loop. So yeah, there's another video where I explain it a bit more, but like a really classic example is conflicts of the third stage, which are to do with the self-evaluation and our kind of physical capability and our performance capability, like our muscles, bones, connective tissues, ligaments, joints, things like that. And that's, for example, like say we are a person who's, using our body, performing, whether we're going to the gym or we're an athlete or in whatever context, but and we, injure ourselves, or we do something that hurts our body, which to me is also a reflection, even though it could be like there's an accident that happens, I think there's still within that vortex of experience on the emotional level of self-evaluation. So the self-evaluation is the conflict related to having a physical, a physical pain somewhere in the body in this area, like the muscles and the joints. And that's obviously going to impact then our ability to perform, our ability to feel capable physically. So we can really easily get stuck in a loop with that one. There's some initial thing that's bringing some sense of self-evaluation, whether that's, we didn't lift as heavy a weight as we wanted to at the gym, or we didn't, whatever. It can be a million things. We didn't, run as fast as we wanted to, or in some way we felt some level of self-evaluation in our physical performance. And then the pain, the discomfort, the issue that we're experiencing with that part of our body then limits us and makes us feel incapable to continue to perform, because now we're injured or we've got, some kind of physical discomfort. So we get, it really becomes like a loop of triggering again the self-evaluation. And then the repair phase, there's going to be inflammation. There's going to be, inflammation is like a pretty big factor of the repair phase. So when we're experiencing that in our body, it's a really good, like okay, there is some healing happening here. Can we support the body to find the full resolution of this repair phase? Or is the experience of this inflammation, pain, whatever, tiredness, fatigue that we're experiencing, are we going to resist it? Are we going to allow it to trigger us again into a conflict of self-evaluation or whatever it might be? So I really think that's like something that's really within us. I mean, it's not easy to always have the self-awareness to see those things about ourselves, to observe the internal, thoughts and beliefs and dialogue and the emotional state that we're experiencing. Like it's not always easy to be aware of that, but the more we can be, the more we can take note of when we're sort of falling back into a loop, and really making a conscious choice to shift the way that we're relating to our bodies and the expressions of our bodies. So that's just a little bit more in depth. I hope it expands a little bit more your understanding of this framework, this perspective, and I'm going to do a video also about biodecoding specifically, what it could look like in a session, what we can work on. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Much love.